Hello, my friends. Happy Chinese New Year, happy Lantern Rite, and welcome to the most efficient artifact domains of 2024. The math is simple, although the results are not as objective as I'd like them to be. Basically, my process was simple. I took all 80 whatever there are characters in Genshin Impact and decided what artifact slot is best in slot on that character. Then I divided them all up onto all artifact domains. There's 15 of them all together. And basically, I just took the straight number and then put them in a top 10 list. Or top 15 list, I guess it would be. So there are some judgment calls that I had to make. There are some ties. Value is also a very subjective thing to determine. There's a lot of disclaimers here, so that's where we're going to start. This list isn't totally comprehensive because what's best in slot for a character in itself is subjective, and I am not an expert in Genshin Impact in any characters really, so all I had to go on was my personal experience and then guides that I looked up, some of which are not totally up to date. So even what's best in slot for a character, don't take this as gospel. I'm not even 100% sure on a lot of these. On top of that, a lot of characters have multiple sets that can work very, very well for them, depending on their team, depending on their weapon, depending on a whole number of factors, how you use them. And even then, the actual damage difference in their team and their team contribution is very minimal sometimes. All that to say, I had to make some judgment calls on a lot of this, and my judgment is far from perfect. And efficiency, too, depends on your account, you know? I mean, what characters you have and don't have, the combinations of those characters, what teams you might want to run, all affect the efficiency of a domain. So all that to say, take this with a huge grain of salt. This really is mostly just for fun. Eeks did a video like this a long time ago. I think it was like 11 months ago at this point. So I'm just kind of doing this honestly to satisfy my own curiosity for fun, and hopefully you find it a little bit fun too. But without any further ado, let's get into it with number 15, the Domain of Guyun. And this is what I'm talking about here. I've only got a whopping one character in here, but even she is a little bit contentious, right? Like, there are other sets Ning can use, whether you're looking at her supportive capabilities or her personal damage. But I mean, either way, Domain of Guyun is still going to be at 15. Retracing isn't like a terrible artifact set. Shield is not bad. Obviously, the 40% damage buff is good. Just most of the characters that would want it typically prefer another set, so it doesn't end up being like best in slot. Speaking of Ningguang, we have Waterfall Wen at number 14. Another set that Ningguang can use, but really there's only one character. Nighttime Whispers obviously being Navia's signature set. Other people can use it, just not their best in slot. Same for Song of Days Past. I mean, a lot of healers don't mind having that 2-piece bonus, so it's not totally wasted if you're farming those for them. There's just not really any of them that can take advantage of the 4-piece set enough that it makes it their best in slot. In 13th place, the Lost Valley, including Echoes of an Offering and Vermilion Hereafter, Zhou's signature set. Echoes can work on a lot of characters. It's not really best in slot for any of them. Technically Ayato, assuming equal substats, but even then it's still ping dependent. Otherwise, Heart of Depths and Gladiators are both comparable sets for him. Vermilion Hereafter is a great set for Zhou, obviously being his signature set, so farm that for him if you have it. Keep in mind both of these domains, or both of these artifact sets rather, have that 2-piece attack percent bonus, which is always obviously really versatile for any attack scaling characters. A lot of times, if you have better substats on 2-piece attack, or 2-piece like HP for HP scalers, etc., instead of trying to force one 4-piece set, if that makes any sense. But just keep that in mind. If you're farming Echoes for Ayato or Vermilion for Zhou, you're not necessarily wasting the other one because you're still getting those valuable 2-piece attack bonus pieces that are very flexible to go on any attack scaler. El Dorado, City of Gold is up next with the Desert Pavilion Chronicle and Flower of Paradise Lost, and this one is actually pretty decent. City of Gold is home to our other primary Animo DPS boys signature set, Desert Pavilion Chronicle. Works wonderfully on Wanderer, Scaramouche, farm it for him if you have him. Just not best in slot for any other characters. Flower of Paradise Lost, on the other hand, is a really sick set. It is the best in slot set for anyone who's doing bloom reaction damage. So you can see the 4-piece set description. Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon damage are all increased by 40%. And then the character that triggers it gains an additional 25% bonus. So really insane for Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, and the premier carries for those types of teams, obviously being Kuki Shinobu and Toma. But anyone who's triggering these reactions on this team, it's beautiful. A lot of people don't farm this set just because of the inefficiency of Desert Pavilion, combined with the fact that it's actually really easy to get good damage on these types of Dendro core reaction teams just by stacking EM, two-piece EM sets. Even Gilded Dreams is very, very comparable. But technically, Flower of Paradise Lost is going to be best in slot on these kinds of teams. Next up in number 11 is Molten Iron Fortress. This one also has 3 characters, in my estimation, that have their best in slot sets here. So technically tied with both 10 and 12. But I think this is, they're different levels of value, right? And this is one of those judgment calls, but let me explain. For Nilou, her artifact set really doesn't matter as much as long as you're stacking as much HP as humanly possible on her. But I believe for her personal damage, Vorkash's Glow is still the best in slot for her. Nymph's Dream is actually a pretty flexible artifact set for Hydro characters. It's best in slot only, I think, on Child and Hydro Traveler. Not that you'd farm the set for Hydro Traveler unless you're a psychopath, but that's something that's real, I guess. But you're also getting the 2-piece Hydro damage bonus, which is good for any Hydro damaging character, and 2-piece HP from Vorkash's Glow, which is also good on any HP scalers. And the winner of our 3-way tie and the start of our top 10, at least in my subjective opinion, is going to be the peak of Vindagnyr with Heart of Depth and Blizzard Strayer. A lot of these older domains have kind of gotten power crept, especially for DPS characters, but the sheer amount of crit rate that you get from Blizzard Strayer, especially against frozen opponents, is just absolutely insane. It's really hard to make up on a different set if you're using a cryo DPS and freezable content. And if you're using mono cryo, honestly, even a non-freezable content as well. Also of note, Guyun is a cryo DPS. Her freeze teams are really good, but her melt teams are also really, really good. So she might not belong here. Wanderer's Troop might be the best for that. I'm just not up to date on what Ganyu's best teams are. Heart of Depth also is a pretty good artifact set. It's pretty competitive on a number of hydro damage characters. Again, it's just not good enough, I don't think, to be best in slot on any of them, but you are getting that 2-piece hydro damage bonus set, so it's not wasted if you're farming Blizzard Strayer as well. Number 9 is Midsummer Courtyard, the Electro domain. Now don't take this one as gospel. The typical people who run on Thundering Fury, Sino, Kuching, Lisa, and Razor, that might be a little bit outdated with the release of Dendro. I think a lot of their technically best teams run with Dendro and are more EM focused than Electro damage focused, so don't take this one as gospel for sure. Thunder Soother and Lava Walker, really useless 2-piece sets unless you value the resistance for some weird reason. But the 4-piece sets, I think, are really good on some teams that rely primarily on Electro or Pyro damage. If you're putting them on a supportive character, they can boost the team's damage a lot. Just not best in slot on anyone. And speaking of Lava Walker, we have the Hidden Palace of Zhou formula. Now, Lava Walker is just Xinyan. Apparently it's best in slot on her. I don't know. I try to stay away from her. I have no idea what she does, but apparently that's a thing. Crimson Witch of Flames is missing Diluc's icon, so that's my bad. But there are 4 characters technically that Crimson Witch is best in slot on there. Barely beats out Midsummer Courtyard. Barely beats it out by 1 character there. It's just all around a really good set on any pyro damage character who, again, can make use of the 4-piece set. Hu Tao I'm not 100% on. I know Shimenao's is very, very good on her. At least I see a lot of people using it. And Marechaussee with Furina I know is really good, but we'll get into that later. For now, I just stuck with her classic set, which is Crimson Witch, which I know at very least competes very competitively with the different options. Now, number 7 is an interesting one. It is Ridgewatch with Pale Flame and Tenacity of the Millilith. This one's technically tied with the last set at 5 characters, but I am putting it above based on the universal almost usability of Tenacity. It is best in slot for these 3 characters, I believe, but if you look at the 4-piece set, it's just so usable on most teams here that appreciate that attack buff, which is a lot of them. Plus, Zhongli is such a universal unit. You can just throw him on so many different teams. I think really the usefulness of Tenacity is kind of betrayed by the fact that there's only those 3 characters on there. Very, very good set. Pale Flame is not great. It's honestly kind of booty, but it is best in slot for the characters that do physical damage as their best team. Eula being the big one, and then Fremine. Now we're getting really close to that super upper echelon tier of domains. This is almost the last one that I think is a little bit niche. There are other Geo or defense oriented sets that work on these Geo characters, but generally, Husk is just such a good set for any defense scalers. It's generally going to be best in slot on Geo carries like Ito, Noel. Ocean-Hued Clam is best in slot on Kokomi, which honestly makes it valuable just based off of that, and also on Chi-Chi, if anyone cares. Now we are in the top 5. This is where the real cream of the crop starts, and what better way to start it off than with the Denouement of Sin, with the Golden Troop set, and the Marechaussee Hunter set is what I'm going to call it. Golden Troop is just an insane new set for anyone who does most of their damage with their elemental skill. So you can see Fischl, Yai Miko, even Navia, since a lot of her damage is loaded onto her elemental skill. Even if it wasn't, though, it would be one of the best sets in the game. It's because it is the best in slot made for the best character in the game, in my humble opinion, and that is Furina. Because of how she enables her characters by draining HP, this set is just so valuable. We'll get into that a little bit later, but there's also the Marechaussee Hunter here, and if you don't know, it's the premier DPS artifact set on any of these new characters who have an HP drain mechanic. So Linny, Wriothesley, Neuvillette, and now Gaming as well. Gaming can also use Crimson Witch of Flames if you're primarily vaping, which I believe most gaming teams are. But Marechaussee Hunter is just so good in the sense Blizzard Strayer is. They both stack a ton of crit rate, but Marechaussee is just more universal since the 2-piece buffs normal and charged attack damage instead of just cryo. And I've got to go in on this domain combination a little bit more, because I know all of you Omega brainers who don't know already are starting to figure it out here. They're saying, Sooshi, if Furina drains people's HP, right, and Marechaussee Hunter gives you crit rate based on when you gain and lose HP, wouldn't that make Marechaussee Hunter a viable set on any DPS that you want to run with Furina? And the answer is actually yes. And this is kind of something people have known since Furina came out with this set, but it's not something at least I knew any of the specific calcs on, if it was actually worth it to run over other characters' best in slots with Furina. Until recently, when the Genshin scientists did a really good video about this with specific calculations. I'll try to link it in the description if I remember, but that really is where the real value, in my opinion, of this domain lies. Because almost any DPS with Furina, you can run with Marechaussee, and have at the very least comparable damage numbers to their best in slot otherwise. Like, not only is Golden Troop great and insane for Furina, not only is Marechaussee great and insane on the characters that it works on inherently, Neuvillette, Wriothesley, Lenny, but the fact that you can be farming for the best character in the game, Furina, and then also simultaneously be farming your primary DPS's best set with Furina at the same time, like the value of that cannot be understated here. The fact that you can be farming Furina DPS and with Strongbox, like, you can be farming pretty much your entire team just by spending your resin in this one domain. Like, the domains ahead of this on the list have more like a higher raw number of characters that have their best in slot there. But as far as efficiency, like both of them working together, this might be one of the best, top 2 at very least. But I will shut up about that for now, because there is another domain, Spite of Solitary Enlightenment, where the 2 sets work just about as good together. This one has Deepwood Memories and Gilded Dreams in the same domain, which is insane. In the same way as you kind of have to be indexing in Furina for the last domain, you kind of have to index in Dendro characters for this one to have the insane value that it does. But you are really farming for your whole team, multiple teams, when you're in Spite of Solitary Alignment as well. Deepwood Memories is like best in slot for all these characters technically. Really, you just want someone on your Dendro team to have Deepwood Memories. It doesn't matter as much who it is, but the fact that you're reducing Dendro resistance by 30% is just so insane that you just have to have it on any Dendro primary damage team. And then your other Dendro character on that team, or whoever needs the EM, will typically run Gilded Dreams. So not all the time, but a lot of the time, you're farming your full Dendro team just in this domain. Crazy domain if you have Dendro characters. Now, if you are savvy with artifacts at all, you probably already know which 3 domains are missing and which ones are in the top 3. Number 3 is Valley of Remembrance, which is home of Maiden Beloved, but also Viridescent Venerer, which is the 3rd most single used artifact set in the game. Viridescent Venerer is just so good on like every single Animo support. I mean, Jean, Sayu, Lynette, Venti, Kazuha, Shenyun now, Sucrose, Heizo. Now, we'll say you can get away with it these days with like Dendro teams and like Chevreuse. You can get away without someone holding Viridescent Venerer, but like Animo damage, swirl damage by 60%, and the elemental resistance shred for 40%. That's just so insane and so invaluable, especially when you combine it with like the grouping of some of these characters is just so good. Oh, and Barbara's here too. Maiden Beloved, I think, is still her best in slot set, but that was from a while ago, so I'm not sure if that's still accurate. In any case, I mean, you'll get pieces for a lot of characters, very efficient still if you're farming for Viridescent. But this is one of the 2 most valuable strong box sets, just because there's not a lot of people who like Maiden Beloved and so many people who run Viridescent. It's a very efficient domain numbers-wise, but like, again, the 2 sets don't work together as well. It's only ahead of them numbers-wise, which means it's very good for the strong box. You can take all those trash artifacts that don't have your desired substats and just throw them into one artifact set, as opposed to using your resin here and maybe getting a lot of maiden pieces, which you might guaranteed don't want, if that makes sense. And speaking of the strong box, we have Clear, Pool, and Mountain Cavern, which has Bloodstained Chivalry, which has a big fat goose egg number of characters, and Noblesse Oblige, which has 10, making it the 2nd most single used artifact set. and the most valuable set to strongbox because you probably don't want to be using your resin here. Now again, this is a little bit contentious because a lot of these characters can run other sets as well, but it's just because Noblesse is like such a good flexible set. Like these characters can run other sets, but other characters can run this set as well. I mean, the 2-piece elemental burst damage is just so universal, and the 4-piece attack bonus is just so nuts for any team that appreciates attack scaling, which is a lot of them. It's really just a set that's so good, but it's so flexible. You just want to make sure that if your team does want Noblesse on it, that one of your characters is carrying it. It doesn't matter as much who it is, as long as they can kind of benefit from the 2-piece set as well. And finally, number 1, to absolutely no one's surprise, after all these years, still is the Momiji-Dyed Court, Shimenawa's Reminiscence, and Emblem of Severed Fate. This domain is catapulted into first place based almost solely off of the universal utility of Emblem of the Severed Fate. Energy recharge just being such a universally appreciated stat by almost any character that wants to cast their burst, and the 4-piece set bonus just being so good for really any single character that wants to do damage with their ult off field. Emblem is kind of like the king of what I consider like the old guard of Genshin. Like you don't really see a ton of characters post Imazuma that really love Emblem of Severed Fate as their like best in slot. But I mean, you look at the list and it's like Xingqiu, Yelan, Xiangling, I mean, even Raiden, like all of these characters that are so good, so flexible, and still like really present and valuable in the meta. I mean, like any burst DPS who you want to be doing damage from off field is really going to appreciate Emblem. You stack ER so that you always have your burst up, and then your burst does more damage based off of your ER. It just works out perfectly, right? And of course, Yoimiya can run Shimenawa's Reminiscence as her technically best in slot, and other characters like I mentioned like Hu Tao can run it. You get like the 2-piece attack bonus on the 2-piece set, so it's still like a really valuable domain, especially if you have Yoimiya or Hu Tao, but just in general because of Emblem. It's because of the 2-piece attack bonus, I think this is still the most valuable place to spend your resin, because the other set is not totally wasted. Like it's not something I would strongbox is what I'm saying. And I mean, if you're farming for a team like Raiden National, you still literally are farming your entire team in this one domain. You just have to strongbox for one character, so it's still really efficient. But there you have it. Those are the most efficient domains based solely off of number of characters. Again, like there's value arguments to be made of like what characters you have or don't have, or best in slot versus not best in slot. I mean, there's just so many caveats you could get into based on your account and based on what you have and don't. You could make like a whole 2-hour video based just on that, which I would love to do, by the way, if anyone wants to see that, would find that useful. I do have a video coming out soon of me just spending all of my resin in the Emblem of Severed Fate domain, just to see how much you can get by spending 1 month in a single domain. Really trying to build up my Raiden National team to try and finally clear the Abyss with full stars. So go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell if you want to know when that one comes out. But otherwise, leave a comment down below. Let me know if I missed anything. If I horribly miscategorized your main, let me know for sure. I do apologize. Again, I am no expert in Genshin or in any characters. I am really just doing this for fun, despite my clickbaity video title. But if you did enjoy it or find it useful in any way, please let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. This was a lot of fun for me, but it did take so much more time and effort than I was expecting it to. There's a lot more data than I realized with all the characters in the game, and it took a lot to find it, like look through guides and all that to find best in slots, get it all written down, and get it into video format for you. So just let me know if you liked it, and your feedback means the world to me. But for now, Shalom, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.